Spread the fire. Welcome back to SMWX. This is a quick fire episode after the EFF press conference here in Cape Town. Three things that I think are important from this press conference. The first thing is the EFF's posture towards the government of national unity. The second thing is the way that the EFF is positioning itself as a potential opposition force in this new era of an ANC-DA plus coalition, possibly. And thirdly, the way that the EFF is negotiating tensions between the ANC at a national and a provincial level. So the first thing to say is that the EFF has taken quite a complex and nuanced position towards the GNU, which is quite different from the MK party, and I think a lot of analysts have collapsed those two entities when they are taking quite different positions. The EFF has not dismissed the GNU or the ANC-DA plus coalition out of hand, or at least the ANC's attempt to bring parties together out of hand, but they've said that they're not prepared to work with the DA in such a multi-party coalition. The DA seems to have taken a similar stance, and so the ANC has been forced to choose one or the other. But what also seems clear to me is that even within an ANC-DA plus coalition, the EFF is prepared to play a role in the legislative branch of governance, and it's clear that they're pushing for a legislative sphere of influence. They would obviously seem to want the Speaker as their first prize, and if the ANC and DA have control over the executive, that might be an interesting counterweight. But the problem is that they don't have the numbers for that, and so it'll be out of their hands. They'll have to convince the ANC to back them on that proposal, or the deputy speaker role, or some kind of committee chairpersonship. So I wouldn't rule out some olive branch to the EFF in terms of legislative oversight from the ANC in an attempt to make sure that the EFF has some stake in this new arrangement, even if it's not formally part of a government of national unity. That's quite different to MK, who have firstly rejected the election results, unlike the EFF, but also has not recognized the sitting of parliament based on these allegations that they believe the electoral results were based on irregularities, which hasn't been proven. So there's that. The second thing that I think is interesting is that Julius Malema, EFF president, said something that caught my eye. He said, "We are moving strategies away from disruption to be a robust and mature parliamentary opposition. You won't see us engaging on the stage of parliament. You won't see us confronting parliamentary white shirts. We want to use parliamentary channels in a robust way in terms of opposition." And I think this is a really important statement, particularly because at a time when the executive could be dominated by many parties, the sphere of opposition politics is under threat of shrinking, and South Africa will need very clear parliamentary opposition to the government of national unity, and so-called, which is just a coalition. And at a time when we have no perfect options, it is important, I think, for the EFF to step into its new iteration. The era of disruption had its season, but I think this season calls for a different kind of politics, a politics in which opposition parties in parliament, from a relatively small base, have to convince South Africans that they can provide a contrast and an alternative perspective to a very powerful government bloc. And so for the EFF to shift away from disruptive politics towards a more formal and traditional version, even if robust, of parliamentary opposition, I think would represent a very important moment, not just for the EFF, but potentially for opposition politics in South Africa. It remains to be seen whether the EFF will be able to follow through on such a proposition, but I'll be keenly observing how they intend to follow through that kind of parliamentary opposition, because I get the sense outside the EFF's base that those who are on the fence about the EFF want to see it move away from disruption as the only strategy and into a more innovative, robust and mature parliamentary democratic strategy. The final thing I'll say is that the EFF is clearly trying to expose tensions between the ANC nationally and provincially. We know that the provincial ANC under Panyaza Lesufi has been prepared to work with the EFF, often against the wishes of the national NEC and those around Cyril Ramaphosa, to be exact, who balk against the EFF as a partner to the ANC. Now, clearly the EFF, by threatening to remove its MMCs from metros in Gauteng, is placing the ANC in an invidious position in which they are going to pit the Gauteng Provincial ANC against the national ANC. The Provincial ANC will not be happy that the EFF will no longer be a partner because they will find it hard to work with the DA. They are less keen on that idea than the national ANC. However, the EFF will now put the unity of the ANC to the test provincially and nationally. And I think that that is emblematic in our politics of a new era in which provincial parties and national parties will be under divergent pressures and incentives, and opposition parties may exploit that. Spread the fire, keep it locked on SMWX across all social media channels, and let's continue to provide an alternative, unbiased perspective on South African politics, which is independent of the interests which create an echo chamber which deprives you of a better and more panoramic view of South African politics. Aye.